And we're off to the races here. We're going to start in just a minute. We're going to let all the hundreds of thousands of people going to join in. Give everybody just a second there to sort themselves out. I hope you're all well. I hope you're having a lovely day. Well, welcome to this first LinkedIn Live from me, Paul Morton. I'm your guide and executive coach and advisor to the stars. I'm here today to illuminate your path to better management as part of what I do when I talk to people about how they lead their business lives. I firmly believe the basics done brilliantly is the definition of excellence. Your foundations have to be strong, rock, not sand. So my goal for this session is to change how you interact with people. I want to make every connection you have more meaningful and more effective. I want you to be using the ideas from today for years to come. So these insights aren't just for today, they're lifelong tools for you, for your personal and your professional toolkit. So if I do a good job, you'll come away today with some really clear ideas on how to manage and deal with everyone you work with better, not just difficult people. So before we get started, in the chat there, tell me please, who are you dealing with or managing? Are you dealing with P for peers? I'll stick in the chat here. Are you dealing with I for ICs, M for managers, D for directors, or V for VPs? Stick something in the chat there and see if you can tell me who it is you're actually having to deal with yourself. This session came about as one of the most often discussed topics I've come across in the last few years of coaching and advising over about 50 executives and founders from all over the world, and then training dozens of their teams. We deal with people every day, and consciously or unconsciously, we put them into two buckets. One of them is easy to deal with, and two is difficult to deal with. So before we carry on, why should you listen to me? Well, I'll tell you this much. I've spent 25 years successfully leading and managing thousands of people in dozens of countries. I've been hammered on the anvil of life and business and have had a lot of practice in, I think, effectively sharing what I've learned and experienced over many years. I've dealt with drink and drugs and death at work, as well as vomiting interns and even some violence and police and everything in between. Most of it has been benign and pleasant, but that's how it happens. So let's start off. What goes into the difficult bucket, right? The unreasonable, the annoying, the frustrating, the awkward, the backward ones who ultimately just don't or can't do what they're told. They don't fit in. They don't fit in with you, the people you've hired, or for some reason or another, they just make everything harder. But there's one watch out here. There's a wonderful quote from George Bernard Shaw, and he says, "The reasonable person adapts to the world. The unreasonable person tries to adapt the world to them. But all progress depends on the unreasonable person." Does that make you difficult? Sometimes I think I'm difficult. Put a yes in the chat if you think you are, or you're more likely to be difficult. I'm difficult. I'm setting that in the chat right now. Yes, I'm difficult. Sometimes we need some level of difficulty or struggle in our lives. Otherwise, we'd never change. We'd never learn. We'd never progress. But, fortunately, as a student of human nature and history, I don't think we're about to run out of difficult. So there are three types of difficult people, I think. There are folk that are different to you. There are folk that don't fit in with what you know and how you work, but otherwise they're good. Two, they are incompetent. They're just not as good as what they should be. They're bad at self-discipline. They've got poor time management. They've got poor manners. They're just not that great. And number three, they're toxic. And these are the people who have problems with everyone. They criticize everyone. They criticize you to your face. Say, "Paul, you shouldn't have done that. That's just not, Bob won't like it when you've said that." They're selfish. They're not interested in other people at all. They're a bad listener. They only talk about themselves. They never pay their way. They never buy a round of drinks in the pub. They lie. They're deceptive. They're high maintenance. They're time consuming. They love a crisis. They love drama. They lose their temper all the time. And they're always the victim. It's always someone else's problem. Now, we're going to look at how to deal with the first two types. Because if you have someone on your team who lies and misbehaves to the extent that they are harming other people, there is only one solution. They need to go, and go now. And it doesn't matter, and this is a big learning for me, I tell you, it doesn't matter if they're your number one salesperson, the best developer you've ever had, the top marketeer, whatever it is. If they are toxic and you've identified them as being toxic, you should consider releasing them from your employment straight away. Now, if you want to have a chat about how you just have a difficult conversation, remind me in the Q&A at the end, we can do that. Right, but let's think though, about that annoying, frustrating, challenging person. What are they thinking? In reality, what do we know about what anyone's thinking? We've got this remarkable ability to mind read, or rather to think we can mind read the deepest thoughts and desires of other humans. We really think that. You do it all the time when you assume other people's intents, other people's wants. But if there's one takeaway I want you to have from these few minutes we have together, it's just this one thing. The very next time you are faced with a problem between you and someone else, the first place you look to solve it is inside yourself. I promise you, that's going to solve 7 out of 10 of the challenges you are facing. Because the faults that we find most annoying in other people are the ones we have ourselves. The people who annoy us most because they're different to us, they're often the ones we need to work with because they complete our weaknesses. So we'll look at this and we'll look at how you deal with the other 3 out of 10 people during this session, and we'll do it as practically as you can. Having a difficult boss can ruin someone's life. You have the power over the majority of their waking hours. You have the power over their income. In the chat here, finish the quote from Spider-Man if you can. With great power comes great what? We're going to look at that. We're going to look at clarity, accountability, and making this a sustainable change. We'll also have a moment to talk about neurodiversity as well as some time for Q&A at the end there. Great quote is, leadership is about getting people to where they would not get on their own. A chap called Joe Owen. He was on my podcast, actually. You should come and listen to him. If the people we call difficult are no different to us, then it's our job to get them to where they need to be as well, without our help. And if you've accepted the role of manager or leader in a team, including someone that you think of as being difficult, your responsibility includes them. And responsibility, well done there, Mark, Alan, good stuff. You picked it out. Responsibility comes with great power. And that responsibility is there, especially if you don't like the buggers. They are who they are. You are who you are. You can either choose to spend time working this out or not. Ultimately, everyone in your care is somebody's precious child, and they deserve the very best that you can bring to them. So let's look at going beyond us versus them. Let's look at uniting against the problem. So how do we solve 7 out of 10 of the people problems that you face? Well, it's just this. The difficult person is not the enemy. The problem is the enemy. If you can, sit next to them physically, so you're actually sitting and you're facing the same direction. If you can't because you're in a video, do it metaphorically at least. Be with them facing the problem. It's you and them against the problem. Tell them you want to make them successful and actually mean it. Build trust. Paul, my job as your manager is to make you successful, but I can't do that part of my job without your help. There are some things that are not working between us, and you list the concrete things that would stand up in court. Not, I feel that, you usually do. You did, I observed. The impact of this is, and then you tell them the direct impact of what that thing you observed is, because they might not have realized that awareness is 90% of the problem. And then you ask, help me understand what's going on. And then zip it, be quiet, let them speak, and listen carefully with both your eyes and your ears, and take time with them. And this will take time. Other people they're not the enemy. Be fellow pilgrims on this journey, because together you can uncover the hidden thorns that separate you. You can't do this on your own. It's not a one-way thing. Whatever is going on between you and the difficult person is almost guaranteed not to be a one-sided thing. If there's a stone in your shoe, there's almost guaranteed there's one in their shoe too, and you need to be the other person. You need the other person's help to get it out. Now, it's emotionally challenging to invest time in a personal relationship that's broken. It's nearly impossible to do that at work. So you're going to have to be really determined to make it happen. Most of the time, we just sit back and go, sod it, I don't care, or we'll fire them, or we'll just ignore them. But when you do put in that effort, you'll hopefully see that effort reflected back at you by the other person. If you break bread and you spend the time with a problem child, I'll say that 7 out of 10 times you'll be surprised at how effectively you can unfold and shrink the problem that was between you by bringing awareness, by learning by their side of the issue, what the issue is from their point of view as well, and then finding a way forward together. There's a massive survey done years ago by the Gallup organization, and they found out there was one core message from all these successful managers they spoke to. And that's what they find out what's important to their team members, what are their strengths, and they look at using those strengths rather than trying to fix broken people. Because when you're working with anyone, just don't spend effort in trying to put in what was left out. Bring out what was left in, because that's hard enough. So have a look at Gallup's strengths for some inspiration there. People just don't really change. Adapting to them may seem annoying, but it's often easier if you want to get things done. Now, if the problem person asks you, you can help them to soften the edges or to develop some skills, but just don't expect radical personal transformation. Awareness of an issue can generally bring magnificent change if the person's willing. So that's 7 out of 10 here. Let's look at how we can solve for the next biggest issue, in my opinion, with difficult people. That's clarity. Setting expectations clearly and comprehensively follows up on the promise you just made about making them successful. I'm going to make you successful, and then you run away. If they don't know what to expect or what good looks like, they've got no chance of succeeding, right? So is clarity a problem between you when you get tasks from your boss? Bet you it is. Put a yes in the chat. Yes, right? Clarity is a problem. It always is. How do you fix it? Well, as I said, I'm going to suggest you pick a framework. I love frameworks. I'm a great framework fan. I've got thousands of them. So a framework on how you make things clear for people. Talk about who, what, why, where, when. Easy. You should believe in the how to them, of course. Try talking about, you've heard of SMART goals, right? How about SMARTer goals? This is a nice one. Specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, time-bound, we know them, ER, evaluated, and resourced. How are you going to make sure it gets better? And do you actually have the resources to do the job? So these are a couple of frameworks you can use. But whatever you do, whatever you use, make sure you cover at least what do you want done? Why it's important? What's the impact of this task going to be? By when do you want it? To whom shall it be delivered? In what format? What resources are they going to need? How will you know it's good enough or complete? And when, and this is important, when and how will you communicate during the task? So then lastly, remembering that their priorities are not the same as yours. Where in their priority list should this sit? Even if you're the boss, everyone has other things going on. So you need to help them to surface those issues and be clear where the task that you're giving them should sit with all the other ones. Everyone is faced with the BLT, right? The BLT, the bigger, louder task. Somebody somewhere is going to come in and shout louder. Where does your task or your project then sit in their list? All of that will then give enough information for them to do the job and a framework for them to come back to you if things go off track. Now, underpinning this has to be the desire on your part to see them be as successful as possible and not catch them out for doing something wrong. That's a company or a team cultural thing where it's okay to ask for help. So be warned, if you're someone who never asks for help yourself, your team will copy you. If you start asking for help, for feedback, that will very, very quickly cascade all the way through your company. It will help you to build that trusting learning culture that you need. Final point, when you're delegating to people, be sure that you're delegating the right things. You should be regularly handing over the things that are in the urgent but not important bucket. You hand them over to the right person for the task. Big issue for other people, accountability. We're going to call it supportive accountability because you see we're nurturing success here, right? See what we're doing? Tell me, do you have some issues with accountability in your company? Put a yes in the chat here. Yes? Issues with accountability? Most people misunderstand it. They misunderstand the word and they hear it used after the fact when things have gone wrong. Someone needs to be held accountable for that, which is code for someone else needs to be fired. Now, retrospective accountability isn't useful. It's closing the barn door while the cows are out having a party in the field. And most managers hate holding people accountable because it's seen as a difficult conversation. Why am I going to invite pain and conflict into my life when I don't have to? Do you find dealing with conflict a bit of a challenge sometimes? Put a yes in the chat. Conflict, it can be hard. I want you to think of this as a check-in and not a check-up. We need to see accountability as a gift. Just like feedback. It's a gift, not a burden. It offers clarity. It offers direction, purpose. You need all of these things so you can be satisfied as an individual in your job, so you can grow as an individual in your role. You need to think as a manager of accountability as supportive and not combative. It's there to build people up and not pull them down. If you want to help them do a good job and feel good about doing it, you need to hold them accountable. In reality, you're doing them a favor. Think about it yourself. How good does it feel to do something really well? You've done a job, you've done it really well. It feels brilliant, doesn't it? When you hold somebody accountable, you are in fact helping them to do their job and to feel good. It's really simple. That's how you do it. Think of the word accountability. In the middle of the word, there is the word count. You want their work to count. They want to count. You need to count or measure what they're doing against what they said they would do. What they're doing against what they said they would do. Now, this is based on the fact that you've set really clear objectives at the beginning. Are you on track to do this thing? Yes, I am. No, I am not. Yes, you are. Bravo. No, I am not. What do you need to get back on track? That's it. Simple as that. Are you on track to deliver to do? If not, what do you need to get back on track? That's it. All you need. And they'll tell you. Now, thinking about this, how do you then make this sustainable? How do you then put this into an organization where it will actually grow and self-perpetuate? Think about this as disciplined sustainability. So you're building for the future as well as fixing the present. Willpower and motivation are frankly overrated. I know this, trying to lose weight and go to the gym, right? Discipline and consistency beat both of these hands down. Discipline equals freedom. Great friend of mine, Cedric Borzay, he says, it takes a lot of discipline to be a free spirit. I think it's better to build habits that are aligned with existing behaviors. What can you slot in alongside of or instead of when you've got a behavior or an action that will actually improve what you're doing? So the discipline I suggest here is to improve your weekly one-to-ones. If you don't have them, well, you should have them. Your one-to-ones, they're just such a key lever for you to drive progress, and they can help you deal effectively with problems. Any problems that you're going to have with difficult people, because the difficult people will amplify a normal problem way out of all proportion. If you can fix it before it actually becomes a problem, you're making everyone's life easier. The task gets done, they feel good, you're not so depressed. 30 minutes a week with every direct report you have. 15 minutes preparation for each of you. One shared rolling document that you update and track plans and progress. And then every 6th week, you add an extra 30 minutes and you make that unstructured and free. And you preferably do that one in person. How's that? 30 minutes a week, 15 minutes to prep. Every 6th week, add in 30 minutes and make it unstructured. Do that. Follow this rhythm. CUFCP. CUFCP. Check in. How are you? Check in, not check up. Update. What's going on with your projects? Okay. If you're a salesperson, this is not a pipeline review, by the way. Feedback. Any feedback that you haven't managed to give in the moment. Coaching. If any coaching's been asked for. Of course, coaching only works if it's actually been asked for, right? And then plan. What are your shared action plans for the week? You do this, I'll do that. CUFCP. Track it all in your shared document. If you want a copy of that, a template, by the way, stick doc in the chat and I'll send it to you. It's a great little template. Always prepare them. Never cancel or move them, at least with less than a week's notice. And then in that session, you're tracking and working on how things are going. You're repeating your aims and your observations and making your life easier. Now, if you as an individual don't have a one-to-one with your boss, you should ask today and get it in there as a recurring event, all right? Last thing, dealing with people who might need a bit of extra help. Neurodiversity and all its beauty. Finding somebody's strengths can be easier when an individual names themselves as neurodiverse in some way, because they've probably put a lot more thought into this than is usual for people. Equally, some people know that they've got challenges with being more abrupt in conversation or communication, or maybe being colder or less sensitive in situations. People who know this and ask for help with this, fabulous. They're a lot more self-aware than normal bods. There's a game you can play. It's called How People See Me. If you surface how people see me as a team, it gives everyone the opportunity to understand each other more. And then you can basically say, this is who I think I am, this is the help I need, and you run around the table with it. And it opens things up. The boss has got to play too. It opens things up for a lot more clarity and a lot more simplicity in the way that you work with each other. Then also, a useful cadence for people who need a bit more instruction than others can be, tell people what you're going to say it, tell them what you said. Tell them you will be delegating a task shortly and give them time to digest. Delegate the task, answer any questions, follow up before the task begins to make sure it's been clearly understood, then go ahead. Reduce the number of steps if you can, make it easier to win and complete each step, build more steps into a task than usual, and maybe even set some ground rules on how you'd like people to handle common questions and any challenges. You're trying to reduce the likelihood of confusion, anxiety, and analysis paralysis. Okay? So the fewer targets there are to hit, the more likely, especially if they're really well defined. And then if you've got somebody who's got some difficulty in picking up regular social cues, maybe you can offer them some resources or help them navigate office and social situations and stuff like that. Okay? I said at the very beginning, if you've taken on the responsibility of being a leader, you are responsible for people's lives to a greater or lesser extent because they spend so much of it at work. It's our role and our privilege to help people get to where they could not otherwise get on their own. And we have to take people as we find them. Some people, they're toxic. If you choose to deal with them, that's upon you. I would say we have to move on and deal with the people that we can deal with. We have to be pragmatic in a business sense. And I wish you well with that. I help commercial executives and founders in 3 ways. So I help people individually, one-to-one as an advisor or coach. I help coach out what's inside them already and then fill in the blanks from my experience and learning. Normally we work in like a weekly session for 12 weeks, covering things like organizational design, go-to-market strategy, operating cadences, leadership, stakeholder management, how you manage your team and your boss. I've also got a 9-week cohort-based practical management course that I run for companies, because most managers are totally unsupported. So I then help them learn the essential practical tools to get their job done faster, like mindset, time and priorities, coaching their teams, setting expectations, hiring and firing with compassion. So that what we do is that's one topic for 30 minutes, twice a week, with an open clinic every 2 weeks. We spread that out to manage the time and maximize impact. And then lastly, working with CEOs and their senior teams, you're trying to build a culture of inspiration, integrity, and support. That's a 4-month program of cultural transformations guaranteed to work. And that covers breakthrough workshops, personal and team coaching, video learning, and practical psychometrics. My next live session is going to be all about dealing with conflict with your boss, peers, and your team. So you be sure to sign up in that. If anybody's got any questions, I've got one here already. If anybody's got any questions, drop them in the chat. I'd be delighted to answer them. Question is, what if the difficult, okay, this is good. What if the difficult person is your boss? Okay. Major problems bosses have is that they're poor communicators. They've never been trained, they're time poor. And I think you can fix that by asking for regular one-to-ones. Yeah, just track your one-to-ones. Next thing is people don't give you thanks. You don't get any thanks. And I personally, I need a bit of approbation now and then. You can ask for updates on performance and then say thanks after it and ask for that to be a regular thing because you find it very helpful and stimulating. Another challenge is unfairness or favoritism. It's very subjective. I think what you can say is, I know it's difficult to give out the jobs fairly, but I feel that I've got the sticky end of the lollipop for a lot of times. They've also, then you've got people who take credit. That's very hard to fix, people taking credit for your work. I think the way you can do that, you can raise it, but I think you're liable to be in a hiding for nothing there if somebody's doing it. If you want to share your work with your peers beforehand to try and get their visibility on your work before your boss gets the chance to staple their name to what you've done. I think then lastly, what's another one? Using insecurity. Some bosses do this. They keep you on your edge, so they think you'll work harder. It's just people that have never been trained. They think that it's all carrot and no stick. So you can call them out on that. Tell them you think you'd do a better job if you were secure about your contract or whatever it was, rather than being under unnecessary pressure. I would also get your CV up to date and get your profile out there. So thank you very much indeed for your time and attention. I've seen there's a few people here. I'll send that document out to you. It's been my pleasure talking to you. Sign up for the next one. Sign up for my newsletter. I hope you enjoy the content I'm putting out on LinkedIn. Please engage and shout. Have a wonderful day. Anybody else wants to ask, I'll be here for another few minutes. Thank you and good night.